the United Nations demands that the United Kingdom halt religion-based pupil selection. The United Nations has issued a stinging rebuke to the United Kingdom's faith-based school admissions policies. In its report, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child urged UK schools to cease using religion as a selection criterion and also advocated for various other reforms, including abolishing mandatory collective worship and allowing students to opt out of religion classes without parental consent. This move has ruffled feathers among religious leaders, with Paul Barber, the director of Catholic Education Service, labeling it as illiberal and asserting that Catholic schools are more ethnically diverse and serve more of the pupils from the most deprived backgrounds than the state sector. Former Bishop of Rochester, Monsignor Michael Nazir-Ali, accused the report of being a secular-inspired attack on faith schools. In contrast, Megan Manson from the National Secular Society heralded the report, urging the British government to heed its findings. The UK Departments for Education countered the report with a spokesperson stating, quote, "Like all other mainstream state-funded schools, faith schools must admit all children who apply without reference to faith where there are places available." Okay, but here's the thing. This is wordplay that they're doing here. Let me explain why. So this ties into how education works in the United Kingdom, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand their entire public education system, right? So if I make a mistake, I'm sorry. But my understanding is that there are state-funded schools that are like just straight up public schools, and then there are other schools that are religious schools. It could be a Jewish school, it could be a Catholic school, where they are a religious institution, but they receive some degree of state funding. And what happens is that there are schools like in your area, and you're welcome to apply to them. And while the school has spots that are available, wow, this is important. While the school has places that are available, they have to select anyone that applies. However, if the school is, they use the term oversubscribed, basically, if they're reaching capacity, if they don't have enough spaces. If the school is oversubscribed, then they are allowed to use religion as a criterion for selection. And that could include proof of baptism, that could include proof from religious leaders in that community, proving that that family is from that religious background. So if the school doesn't have enough spots, then they are allowed to discriminate on the basis of faith. There literally is, something is bad when they have a literal exemption from the Equality Act. There's some, I can't remember what it's called, but it's some sort of like an equality law. And there's literally an exemption from the equality law for this kind of policy. So whenever there's something that's like an equality law, there's an exemption. I'm like, oh, we're already off to a bad start.
Wait,
So basically go ahead.
Now, how are they defending the religious schools? How are they defending this? This is obviously a discriminatory practice.
Because they basically say that they want to make sure that people within their local community from that religious background are able to receive that education. That they don't have
But
to
you
go
are
too far out.
they're publicly funded.
At least partially, yeah.
Yeah, you're publicly funded. You can't do that. What are you talking about? Oh, we want to make sure. So like, you're discriminating. And like, no, we're not. Like, what's your excuse? Well, because we want to make sure that the people from our religion get. That's discrimination. That is called discriminatory. Like, are they not listening to what they're saying? How is this not discriminatory? You cannot make one religion, give them more privilege or more over others. You're publicly funded. You can't do that.
Yeah.
This is what they're complaining about. You're being called out for discrimination.
There was one guy.
You know what it would be like? You know what it would be like? Like, you would imagine if you have a school and they're like, we are very diverse. We open to everybody. Okay. But if we have, like, I don't know, in certain situations, we only want to go and find white kids. Okay. only white kids, just because we want to make sure that white kids are getting the education they need. They're like, okay, sorry, sir, you can't do that. You can't do that. That's discriminatory. Like, no, listen. We are very diverse already, but in certain situations, we want to make sure that we identify white kids don't that they don't have enough education, and we want to make sure they get their spots. Dude, you're talking about choosing kids based on the color of the skin. That would be discriminatory. Same as this. That is discriminatory. You can't do that. How is this not even? Has this been even allowed upon this point? If they were publicly funded,
Because they have an exemption, they have a literal exemption to the existing equality
discrimination.
policy.
For discrimination.
Yeah. And this is a thing. And what's so interesting is I didn't know this, that I need to find the exact quote so I make sure that I don't get this wrong. But the UK is the only country in the Western world that mandates collective worship. Let me find the exact quote because I was really shocked to learn this. Yeah, here it is. The law in England and Wales states that all maintained schools shall on each school day take part in a collective act of worship. Northern Ireland and Scotland have similar laws. Even schools with no religious designation, the worship must be, quote, wholly or mainly of a Christian character. The UK is the only Western democracy which legally imposes worship in publicly funded schools. That's
Wow.
crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Actually, now that I remember, I went to school in England.
How old were you?
Yeah.
You were tiny.
Yeah. I was like first year elementary school. And
Yes, you're like
they
5.
showed me no, 5 and 6. They showed me Jesus. They showed me. I remember coming home. I'm like telling my mom they had water and they poured it into another glass and it turned into wine. It was white and it turned red. It was I thought it was a magic trick. I had no
It is
idea
a
that
magic
was
trick.
mythology. Yeah, I know, but I didn't know that they were telling me about Jesus back then. I just thought that they were just showing us a cool magic trick. But yeah, so
Well, that showed me Jesus.
They attempted to brainwash me in UK schools when I was a kid.
Yeah. And obviously, the National Secular Society of the UK has long called for these laws and these collective worship laws to be completely abolished because they infringe on everyone's freedom of religion, every family, and especially for those that are completely non-religious. And what I thought was so interesting was that they also called for it to be abolished or make it allowable that students can self-remove themselves from religious education and from collective worship. And the people that were defending these things and had a lot to say about the UK report were like, hey, this has been allowed since like the 1940s, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. You guys aren't listening. It's been allowed since the 1940s that with parental consent, you can remove yourself from these things. The United Nations is saying that kids should have the ability without parental consent to say, I don't want to learn this. That's what they're saying. And so what I thought was so...
Somebody should let them know. Somebody should let them know that they have that right, because a lot of times kids don't know their rights.
I know. Yeah. And one of the people that was defending the UK policies literally got all snippy at the UN and was like, you guys should be focusing more on Afghanistan. Focus more on them, blah, blah, blah. I was like, you asshole. Like, the United Nations, you have to do these reviews for every country. This is standard. No one, this is standard. Canada's going through a UN review right now. Actually, one of our people on our board of directors submitted a report to the United Nations for Canada's review of its secularism. You know, every country has to go through this. Don't think that you're so special.
All right.
Like we're the United Kingdom. We're above this. Go focus on Afghanistan. Don't you care about girls' education? It's like, oh my God.
Actually, and also it's also related. Okay. And I don't want to say this, but I just want to say it's related. Okay. The reason why it's related is the way you could help other countries is by becoming rich yourself. Okay. And by you become rich yourself in investing in your future. and you invest in your future by investing in your children, and you invest in your children by investing in their education. So it's all related.